So welcome to Real Life Connections. I am so excited to have our next guest here. This is Hannah. Hannah and I met at Miss Wheelchair Florida 2016, where she ran as one of the contestants. It was great meeting her, but I'm really excited to have her on our show today. So Hannah, could you start off by telling our guests just a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, sure. My name is Hannah. I work in the finance industry. I met Sarah at the Miss Florida pageant back in 2016, and I just really loved her spirit and her energy. We just kind of kept in, connection ever since then. And I'm so glad that she asked me to come on board.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited to have you. So, if we can, we'll start off, if it's all right with you, and talk a little bit about your disability. So, what is your disability, and kind of how does it affect daily life for you?
I have osteogenesis imperfecta, also known as brittle bone disease. I have one of those types where it's like kind of funny. Like I can't walk. I currently use a wheelchair. I know a lot of people, depending on what type you have like ultra sensitive bones. So like, depending on what range of motion like you do, like you can break a bone easily. Thankfully, I haven't broken a bone in a while, but it does definitely affect like, your day-to-day life. But
Sure.
yeah.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So you were born with OI, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so it's a disability from birth. And then you said you use a wheelchair. Have you used a wheelchair your whole life?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, ever since like 5 years old or 7.
Yeah,
Whatever.
me too. Okay, sometimes it's different. So yeah, absolutely. So do I. So let's talk a little bit about growing up. We kind of talked before we got started about what that looked like for you, but what was growing up with a disability kind of like for you?
It was really interesting. My parents, I'm the middle child, so it was just kind of like, they're both able-bodied, and I was the only one with a disability, so I wasn't treated as differently. My parents were still your typical Asian parents that like, wanted you to succeed. They like education first, and they really hammered that in. Yeah, they didn't really treat me any different.
How about your siblings? Like, so I have an able-bodied brother too. He's a younger brother, but he's like 6 feet taller than me because he's huge. But he would do crazy things and like, duct tape me to my wheelchair and all those typical sibling things. Did you have sibling rivalries like I did?
Um, I guess. I mean, I have a younger brother as well, and he honestly treats me like a big brother. Or he's kind of like a big brother to me. He's always very overprotective of like
Yeah.
guys that start talking to me, or like, he's horrible though. Like whenever we go driving, he won't park in the wheelchair parking spot because he'll forget. Like honestly, like I forget that you have a disability. I'm like, oh, that's kind of sweet, but also it's really hot. Like let's park where we're supposed to park. Like, but yeah, they're the best. They're number one supporters, my best friends. We're all 1 year apart, so it's just.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we are 5 years apart. So growing up, we didn't get along so well, but now that we're both adults, it's so much easier.
Oh yeah, I
That's
bet.
awesome. Very cool. So, what's one of the biggest challenges that you faced so far? It can be anything.
Where do I start? Honestly, I guess like I'm at the age where I just really want to be independent. So I'm working on and like navigating honestly like how to get there. For example, like living on my own and getting a car, which I'm working on with like all the accommodations that I need, and then also like it's a lot. And then like how do I navigate a career without like losing my health benefits? And then I'm very reliant on my wheelchair, and dating's hard, so just all that.
I understand. I understand. It is hard. It's definitely not easy, for sure. But how's your car process going? I know we had talked about cars before because I have finally gotten my car, so now I drive my car. But have you started? What
Yeah,
resources do you use for your car?
so yeah, I've started working with VR, since you kind of like put it in the right direction. I didn't even know that they can help with the karma accommodations, because like I think I asked them when I was in high school and they had like no clue. And
Mm-hmm.
like you really have to be an advocate for yourself and be like, I know this program exists. Please research it, and like this is one of my goals and I'd like to pursue it. you know,
Right.
and yeah, there's a lot of resources out there that just people don't know, and it's all about research or like asking questions and whatnot. But yeah, it's going good. Actually, because of COVID, I got pushed back, and I really wanted to get my car before the end of this year because it was one of my New Year's resolutions. But they're saying it's like gonna be maybe March, for my driver training to get started.
For
So
your training. That's awesome. Yeah. So for any of our viewers who don't know, typically driver training is about 40 plus hours behind the wheel. But for us, they like to cram it in like 5 days. So I did all my driver training in 1 week, and then got my license right at the end of the week. So it is a pretty big accomplishment. Like once you get it done, you're like, finally, like freedom is real. And this is what independence feels like. But it is a really long process. Do you know how long have you been working on trying to get to this point, you know?
Well, I always knew that like I would have to save up money. So I
Right.
feel like I started really saving last year, like the beginning of
Okay.
last year, and I drew a little jar, and then like I would just like put a line of like, the goal, and I would say about like a 2.5 years.
That's awesome. So I'm
Yeah.
really glad it was shorter for you. It took me 8.5 years to get my car. Yeah, it was a terrible process.
I mean, to be fair, I did get my permit when I was, what, 15, 16.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
just expected that I probably would.
Yeah, but that's a really big accomplishment. I'm super excited to hear more about how it works and when you get to drive for the first time, then you can park wherever you want. You don't have to worry about your brother parking the car.
I know. Thank you. Still upset.
That's awesome though. So tell me a little bit about what you do for work. I know you said you work in finance.
So I work for a financial advising firm. They do like holistic kind of thing. They look at like tax, estate planning. And my boss, who's a financial advisor, she really took me under her wing and started mentoring me. And I really want to develop that special needs planning niche. Just because like there's a lot of us who, like a lot of special needs planners out there, it's just like, oh, I got in a bad car accident and I have this lump sum money that I got from the court, and then I put it in a trust or something like that to protect your assets. However, there are people like us who are just like in this little middle ground. And I just spoke with a special needs attorney yesterday, and he was saying that, like the law is not really, it kind of like, there's like a little gray area. And they think of disability as like, oh, I got hurt from like work. But what about people who were born with disabilities and we're trying to be a part of society and make a decent living and live independently without losing our state's benefits? So it's really interesting. There's not a lot of people that do it, and I just feel like that's what my calling is in life, and I really hope to pursue it.
That is awesome. So when you figure it out, let me know because I need to know.
Yeah,
That's something
I'm here for you, girl.
But it's really a challenge because, and you're right. So the way laws are written, it's either they're written for the older population because they become disabled when they get older, or it's written for somebody from an accident or something like that. And so those of us who were born with a disability were just like, okay, well, we just want to go and do life like we're supposed to and work and live on our own and have a car and have a family and, be people.
Yeah.
Like, what's that look like
what
for
a
us?
concept, right?
And nobody knows, they can't be like, oh, let me look in the rule book and see what you're allowed to do. Like, we don't exist in there. It's not a thing. So that's a big feat, but I'm so excited to hear kind of where that takes you because there's a lot of us out there, I think, that want that ultimate goal. And then there's a few of us like you and I who are like, okay, well, we're working, but we have to be so careful on what we do and how we do it because we need the medical benefits too, or we need the people to come in to help us on a daily basis or however that is. And those are so far expensive that there's no equal balance between how much can you work and can you afford to do all of it? No, absolutely not. We still need some type of assistance. So it's an interesting topic, but definitely I'm excited to hear what you find out because it's definitely
go like $50,000 sometimes, depending on like what your needs are. I'm just like,
yeah.
I don't know if anyone has 50,000 in their checking account, like.
Exactly, and that's only for a year. I mean, what happens the next year? Like,
right.
So it's kind of crazy. So what's one of the most frustrating parts about living with a disability?
I guess like the stereotypes that go with it. Um, yeah, I would have to say that. And like just people's fear of like the unknown and like treating you differently because of how you look. I guess that's the most frustrating part because I've always had really good group of friends and family that just like never treated me differently at all. And they always honestly like they're like, I forget you're disabled. And I'm like, I do too sometimes. I'm just like sometimes I like wake up like, oh yeah, that okay, that's right. And then I like get to my like, my daily routine. But like I do forget like when I'm out at like Disney World or like somewhere out in public and it's like you do feel like different because of people staring at you, which I'm used to now, but it sometimes makes the people I'm with uncomfortable because it's just like, why do they see you differently? And it's just like you're not different. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's just what I have to deal with. I'm sorry that like it makes me feel bad because they feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. And I think it is a lot about, the stereotypes and kind of what's been known before, but it's now trying to figure out how to change it so it's not known forever.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and it is really different. A lot of my, I guess you would call them able-bodied friends, are the same way. They're like, off somewhere, and they're like, "Oh, Sarah, oh wait, we forgot. Wait, you can't go this way. Your wheelchair won't make it." And I'm like, "How did you forget? Like, it's been this way
yeah,
forever." But
yeah. It's like thank you, but also no, we need a ramp. So
exactly, yeah. I just went somewhere the other day, and my mom was like, "Oh, we got this," and we get to the end, and there's like 6 steps, and I'm like, "Man, how are we navigating this?" And she's like, "Oh man," I'm like, "It's
I
okay." Like,
know,
we were so close.
so close.
But it does happen a lot, and I don't ever take offense to it. I don't know if you do or not, but it doesn't bother me because I'm like, I like that they don't see that first, so it's kind of like okay.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
but so let's see. What's one thing? This is probably my favorite thing. So I've always said I love proving people wrong because everybody always says you can't do that, you can't do that, and I'm always like, yes, I can. Watch, I'll just show you how to do it. So
Exactly.
what if you've ever been told you can't? Were you able to prove them wrong? And what's that one thing that you were like, finally, I proved them wrong? Like, I feel so much better.
Well, when I get my car, that'd be nice. Also when I went off to college in Virginia, I was living by myself, and a lot of people were very skeptical. When I studied abroad in Japan, a lot of people were kind of skeptical, but like I want to say worried. They're just like, "Are you sure you want to do that? Like, are you sure you could be by yourself?" I travel by myself all the time, and now it's kind of like, "Oh, she's off so and so. Like, it's not a big deal." I'm like, "Yeah, like anyone can study." And like I'm not gonna lie, like for the study abroad thing there was a lot of like not hurdles, but a lot of people were there was a lot of Zoom calls. There was like, hey, like, can you do your own laundry? Will you not, I mean, just making sure you don't starve, like
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be fine. Like just people are willing to help if you ask for the help. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's awesome. I didn't get the opportunity to study abroad. But if I could go back, I probably would figure out how. So what was it like being, I mean, it's Japan, so is it an accessible country? Is it not so much? What's that look like? Just curious.
I feel like it's like there are those places where it's just like they don't have an elevator, they don't like they're the old buildings like temples and stuff, like it's been there forever, like centuries. But a
Exactly.
lot of the people that do like a lot of the like the monks there, whatever, they had like accessible like places. They're like, yeah, we added this ramp, and you
Oh,
know
nice.
yeah. And like if you're in Tokyo, especially like where it's heavily touristy, there are a lot of and that's specifically why I chose Tokyo over somewhere like London, because they're so advanced in their architecture. The people, their mindset is so different there. Like they don't treat you any different. There are those one-off people, just like, oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But they were just so nice and accommodating. I will say that their buildings and rooms are much smaller, but they will like accommodate you, like, hey, like this is the biggest room we got, it's just like that's fine, like okay, like I just need the bed, like
Yeah.
I'm
That's
not
really
gonna.
cool. I've never traveled to another country and I get really nervous trying to figure out if I should or not and what I can
Oh, like
access
I
once I
did,
get there.
my battery did die in the middle of nowhere. That was my worst fear, and it actually happened. But like again, like people are there to support you, and they actually were like calling like the manufacturer of the chair. And apparently, they're like right there, and they're like, "Yeah, let me walk you through the manual," and like and I don't know. It's just like your fears will happen. I feel like, but it's not even a big deal. Like there's nothing to fear.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, and then I have to plan my international trip somewhere. I don't know where I'll go, but I have to
Do
figure
it. We'll go together.
There you go. That's fine. That sounds great. We can do a whole segment on traveling internationally. That would be fun.
Yeah, I'm down.
Well, that's really cool. So for work and for school, I guess this would be the best question to apply to that. What do you use any types of assistive technology or anything to help kind of make it a little easier?
I just feel like maybe the desk height.
Okay.
That's pretty much it. And then I always like sit in the front. Not
Do you
only
use
because
like an adjustable desk, like the ones that go up and down, or is it just normal?
yeah, and I think a lot of the schools now are having that. Like you just kind of
Yeah.
like it comes out and it cranks.
Yeah.
I know UCF has that. And the other colleges I've been to like had that. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I use. I use a standing desk at work too. So obviously I'm not standing at it, but because it can go up and down, then I can choose if I use my mouth for this or if I use my hand for this. And I'm like, this is so convenient so that I'm not sitting in the same position all the same time. So that's really cool. What about computer wise? Just a regular computer for you to use anything touchscreen or what's easier?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Very cool. That's awesome. I just think it's great. Like, okay, so because of COVID, I've been home since March. So I work from home. Have you been working from home or do you go to the office?
Half and half.
Half and half.
Because I am, again, my boss is amazing. She was like, she knows that I rely on transportation for my friends and family.
Right.
And the office is like 30 minutes away, I want to say, with traffic. So she'll be like, Hannah, if there are days that you can't make it or you don't have a ride, I know you're dependent on other people, like it's totally fine to work from home. So it's literally like half and half.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I now do half and half. So I go back to and from once or twice a week just to have people interaction because every once in a while it's nice to see people and not just see virtual faces all the time. So that's pretty cool. But I think because of COVID, it's become, at least for me, I've noticed it's become a little bit easier to kind of fit into all meetings. And I don't have to worry about, can I get through the door? Is there enough space in the meeting? Because I can just pop right on the computer and we're good to go. So it's kind of interesting how times have changed, even though, it wasn't something we were expecting.
Right.
So
good problem, I guess.
It depends on how you look at it, I guess.
Right.
So we have a couple more questions before we end, but what's one thing or kind of how do you navigate keeping kind of a positive attitude so you can keep going each and every day?
I don't know. I've always been a visionary person. I've always had goals. I've always loved the idea of setting goals and like New Year's Eve and kind of thing, and or New Year's resolutions kind of thing. And so I'm always like the thought of waking up and knowing like what my calling is in life. I could always wake up with a smile on my face for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, sometimes it takes a while for a person to find kind of what that is or what their calling is or where they want to go. But I know for me, like now that I kind of know what direction I'm going in, it's exciting to wake up the next day because you never know what's going to come. But it's still something related to what you're so passionate about. So it's kind of like that feeling of like, okay, well, I have to today because, of this, and this. So that's really awesome. So is there anything right now in your community that you would like to see changed to be more accessible?
I think public transportation would be awesome just because like the places like in LA and New York, granted some of the subways in New York aren't wheelchair accessible, but the people that do live there know, okay, I got to take this train, like, and I could get there. Like they know the system, like what is accessible and what's not. I think it is a little harder in Florida. I am like, I don't know how it is in Jacksonville, but it's just like if people can utilize, I don't know, if we had more buses or even like Uber, like if Uber or like Lyft had more wheelchair accessible cars, that would help. I would love to see that. Like in cities.
Yeah, so I know for us in Jacksonville here, they've really, they've like limited the number of stops and the bus doesn't go everywhere. So you can only get to certain sections of the city. And it would be really neat to see Uber or Lyft have a fleet of wheelchair accessible cars. I don't know. It would just be so easy to be like, oh, let me just order my car real quick and have it show up, just like anybody else orders their car to have it show up on time. But I think that would be really neat to see too.
Yeah,
Because
actually,
transportation, I think, is going to be an issue for a while.
sadly. No, like when I was in New York and I had Uber, there was a section that said WAV, which is wheelchair accessible vehicle. And they had like a couple in the city, and I was like, heck
That's so
yeah.
cool. That's
It's
awesome.
so duper, yeah, super duper cool.
That's really cool. So is there anything, let's see, is there anything you feel uncomfortable with currently that those who do not have a disability tend to do?
Mm, I don't know.
We talked a little bit about staring. Obviously, that's something we'll have to eventually get over, so that people understand. But here, let's change the question because we didn't talk about it. What about, or how do you feel about people asking you questions about your disability?
I welcome it actually. I really do. Like I am so, and I, there are days where like I'm pretty confident within myself. Like I really want people to ask me questions, and um, because that means that they know something that they didn't know before, and just like, maybe the next time around they meet somebody with a disability, they'll be like, well, they wouldn't think differently. I don't know, like if that makes sense or not, but
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a level of understanding, but also being comfortable versus uncomfortable.
right.
So like, and if somebody were to come up to me, and I mean, normally it starts with staring. So do you say hello to the person, or do you acknowledge that they're staring at you, or do you not? I know for me, I'm like, hi, how are you? Like, are you okay? Do you need help with something? What is it
Right.
that I can help you with? And then I'm like, it's okay if you ask me questions because I'd rather you ask than assume something that's incorrect because nobody's ever going to learn if we keep making the wrong assumptions.
And I've had like a best friend since like elementary school. And recently she just found out about my diagnosis. And I'm like, girl, you can ask. And she's like, I didn't know whether or not you'd be okay. And I'm like, we've been friends since elementary. Like, I don't want you to feel some way or another. It's one thing like, I don't know, I guess if I just met you and you asked like it's the way you say it. Like, don't be like, "What's wrong with you?" Like nothing's wrong with me. But if you're like, "Hey, I was just curious. Like, what is your diagnosis? If you're comfortable sharing, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't mind those. Like, just don't be so invasive. Like, hello, like, ask me for my name first, and like, and we could start. That's where the conversation is.
Yeah. I had funny story. I had somebody come up to me once and they were like, "Do you sleep in your wheelchair?" And I was like, "Well, that's a really interesting question." I was like, I mean, no, but I don't even, who are you? What's your name? How are you? Like,
Yeah,
but what's the next question that you're going to ask me? But it's
that's
just a matter
honestly
of how you ask it. I think we can all be open to answering questions. Obviously, if you don't, pinpoint or assume something's wrong, because there's nothing wrong, but, just
exactly.
being inquisitive and knowing. So for us to wrap up here, is there anything that I haven't asked that you'd like to share or a piece of advice you'd like to give the community before we go?
I guess some advice is like, hey, you can have, if you do have a disability, don't be so scared about, going out there and just challenge yourself. Like, it's okay. Like, you can have a job, you can have a fulfilling life, you can, like, people want to get to know you. You're a great person. You have gifts that other people don't have. And it's like truly up to you to make that first, like the step and like put yourself out there, and you never know what's going to happen. Like the world is your oyster, truly.
Exactly. I love it. And I think it's so important to challenge yourself. So, Hannah, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It was great being able to kind of talk about life for you and what that looks like and how you continue to live life fully, because that's so important. So I will make sure that we share so that our viewers can connect with you as well. And we'll follow your story because I'd love to be able to post when you get your car and go through driver training and stuff like that, because we all learn from each other. So we never know who
Exactly.
we might be able to help out from the experiences we have. So Thanks so much for being on Real Life Connections. I appreciate it, and we will definitely keep in touch.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it.